Namaskar and welcome to In Focus. If in the last 2 weeks you've detected a change in American rhetoric regarding India's nuclear tests, then it's very largely due to Prime Minister Vajpayee's special envoy, Mr. Jaswant Singh. Today, in an exclusive interview to In Focus, Mr. Jaswant Singh talks about the attitudes he had to face and the issues he had to address recently in New York, and in particular he talks about the subject at the core of the whole issue, India's relationship with Pakistan. Mr. Jaswant Singh, in the 6 weeks since India's nuclear tests, has there been a better understanding in Western capitals of why this is necessary?
Oh, I should say decidedly. There has been a better understanding because, firstly, we've been better able to explain the rationale behind all of this, without any doubt whatsoever.
And so the essence of this is that we have gone out and explained why we did it, which is why our understanding is better.
I might choose to use a different word. Instead of explained, I would say we have engaged in a dialogue. Because India is too great a country to explain anything. It's for others to understand.
But the dialogue was necessary.
Oh, without doubt, without doubt. Dialogue is a necessity anytime.
Okay, so that the audience can understand the nature of the dialogue you had, let's touch upon some of the broad Western concerns that you, in a sense, had to face. One of them, I suppose, is the belief that India's security requirements, as they see it, didn't require a nuclear response. How did you address that issue?
See, post-Cold War and the demise of Cold War, the West as a larger entity, United States in particular, had come to understand that the end of warfare as such in the West, which had come really after almost 4 centuries of conflict, was not simply an end of history, but it was being replicated all over the rest of the globe. It had to be explained it isn't being replicated, and the dream of the 21st century, being the century of trade, cannot be achieved unless the security concerns of all are equally met. This was the essence of it.
So in other words, you said to them that, look, our security concerns are different to yours, and you have to understand our concerns to understand why we feel this response is necessary.
Absolutely. Our security concerns are different. And I explained irrational, that India's security is based on a fundamental tenet, either through universal, non-discriminatory disarmament, or failing which the principle of equal and legitimate security for all.
Okay, to what extent was this argument that you presented undermined by the fact that back home, people like Mr. Gujral, to name one, are standing up in Parliament and saying that in his time as Prime Minister, there was no security threat that required a nuclear response?
Well, I don't wish to be disrespectful to a former Prime Minister who's held the portfolio of external affairs, but I rather think that he was playing more politics than reflecting on realities. When we talk of security threats, we are not talking of an immediate occurrence that has taken place. We are talking of the evolution of a situation. There, without doubt, there exists a situation today wherein from virtually Vancouver to Vladivostok, there has come into existence a kind of a nuclear security arrangement paradigm. The Asia-Pacific coast is so covered, barring a few exceptions. Australasia, outside of New Zealand, is covered. There is a vacuum, and that vacuum is Southern Asia and Africa. The Americas are covered. Now, in this vacuum, the kind of troubled neighborhood that we have, to say there is no security threat to India is really to not recognize realities.
You said that he was, in a sense, playing politics, but did he go further? Did he end up damaging a case that otherwise, when you presented it, would have been just that much more convincing?
Well, I would really leave that to his judgment. He's rather an elderly gentleman, and it is not for me to say whether he's damaged or not. The results are therefore to see there is a greater understanding.
Okay, the other broad strand of Western concern, in a sense, was that India's tests, followed shortly after by Pakistan's tests, may now encourage countries like Iran, Iraq, Korea to do tests of their own, thus creating what the West fears most of all, an unstable, dangerous nuclear environment.
I think that is a reality. What you say is very much a part of the greater concern. It is a concern that we too have. but there is a counter to it. That what has taken place in the month of May, between 11th of May, 11th, 13th, 28th, 30th of May, is to coming to surface what was, after all, always there. We had always said that Pakistan had really begun nuclearizing from about mid-87. This was known to the entire Western world. What is the rationale behind Presley Amendment? Why were successive presidents of the United States of America from about 1990 unable to certify to their Congress?
Are you saying that, in fact, both the 11th and 13th of May and the 28th and 30th of May have brought to the surface something that was always present? In other words, it's made a situation apparent but not necessarily more unstable.
In fact, I put a point of view which I've said so. I've said it in India, I've said it abroad, that a stable, a self-confident, a democratic, and a reassured Pakistan is good not simply for India, it's good for Pakistan, it's good for everyone. Pakistan need not have anxieties as far as we are concerned. India's nuclear program was never focused, never country focused. It's an unfortunate reality that Pakistan's program is Indo-centric. Indian statecraft requires to address itself to that reality. But now that it's all out in the open, here is an opportunity to really build on a more self-confident and reassured basis.
Tell me, did you, in any time when you were talking to Strobe Talbot or other Americans, give them some sense of assurance that India would be on their side when it's a question of ensuring that proliferation doesn't go further? States that they rightly or wrongly consider rogue states, worrying states, don't now cross this Rubicon.
Should I put it somewhat differently, that India would be on the side of non-proliferation and disarmament, because that is a side to which we have belonged from the very beginning. It's a side to which we now remain committed. The United States of America has, after all, arrived at disarmament and test bans only lately. India were the champions of it.
Okay,
and
then,
it's an unfortunate situation that the roles appear to have got reversed, but that's not the reality.
okay, then in that context, how did you address one concern that was repeatedly made to you, that India, in a sense, is the original sinner? There may be mitigating circumstances to partly explain what Pakistan had to do, but there are no such circumstances to explain our action.
Oh, I reject that entirely. India is not a sinner. India is not in violation of any international treaty. It is not breached even a bilateral agreement.
And was that point accepted?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. You can see it now in what is coming.
Was it a
out.
grudging acceptance, or was it
No, in international relations, acceptances are acceptances, whether grudging or feeling.
quite right? It's the fact of acceptance that counts.
Yes.
Okay, let me slightly broaden our subject. This week, President Clinton pays his long-awaited visit to China. How do you respond to the view that the American administration seems to be siding with China, a non-democratic state, a state with a record for assisting nuclear proliferation, against India, the world's largest democracy, and a country with impeccable records in nuclear non-proliferation?
Well, I would really treat it at two levels. Firstly, a visit by the President of the United States of America, which is a return visit after the President of People's Republic, Jiang Zemin, had visited the United States of America, is really an exercise of the sovereign rights of two nations to conduct their relations as they wish to.
And the second level?
The second level about what United States should judge or what they should do in regard to their foreign policy. What you have observed is a comment that is being made in the United States of America. It is for the U.S. Administration and the leadership of the United States to really address this too. I conduct my relationship with those that I had to talk to, and with, if I'm asked to do this again, really on the basis of the function of two sovereign nations, not as playing off one against the other.
Are you deliberately avoiding making this point because you think it might embarrass the administration and it's not your job to embarrass?
No, it is, firstly, it is not my job to embarrass, certainly. It is not my job. But that I'm deliberately avoiding, I think in Canada I should say I'm not avoiding entirely, but I'm trying to take evasive action.
Because you don't want to, how shall I put it, add a fresh strain of controversy to a relationship where you want calm waters now?
No, in fact, the relationship that we are attempting to develop is on two factors. One is on restoration of dialogue, and the other is of restoration of mutual confidence. And I think it's best if we do not comment on each other's conduct of their respective international affairs.
Okay, you brought up this interesting issue of respective confidence, and let me, as you probably no doubt yourself are aware, bring into the conversation what Henry Kissinger recently wrote in a series of articles in the Washington Post. He called upon American foreign policy to start distinguishing between countries that represent no threat to American interest and no threat to world peace, and other countries which he says do represent a threat to the nuclear equilibrium. Were you able to convince Strobe Talbot that India falls into the first category?
In fact, I had meetings with Professor Kissinger too, and very useful meetings. And the line or the viewpoint that Professor Kissinger has advocated is in fact a viewpoint that is now shared by a great many in American opinion makers, in American Senate, because it's a democracy.
Were you able to convince Strobe Talbot of this viewpoint?
No, I think Mr. Talbot, as acting Secretary of State, represented the views of his government, and I'm sure he, as he himself said, he heard me very cooperatively and with great attention. As to I carried conviction, not time will tell.
Tell me now, what is the next stage of this dialogue that you've started? You've gone, you've clearly made an impact, but now where do we go?
Well, I think this was stated clearly, even in we decided, Mr. Talbot and I, that at the end of our 2.5 hours of talks, which by themselves is significant.
Session, sure.
Well, significant, that we should issue a kind of agreed statement to the press, which we did, in which is contained an affirmation that both he and I will meet again. The date and venue of the meeting shall be decided through diplomatic channels. And I hope to be able to do so fairly soon.
Within the next fortnight or month?
Well, fairly soon is quite specific.
But you are going to therefore continue to be the principal interlocutor from our country with America in this dialogue?
Well, such is the intention for the time being, yes.
And will Strobe Talbot be the principal?
Yes, that is so. They have communicated that formally, and I have been commissioned by the Prime Minister to also communicate the same to them.
So, in fact, the future lies in the hands of Talbot or Jaswant Singh.
No, that isn't so. I don't think the question is individual. The question is really situational.
But as you know, when two individuals have a chemistry that clicks, it helps the situation advance.
Indeed.
Did you click with Strobe Talbot?
Oh, yes, I think so. Yeah.
And you've developed a healthy mutual respect for each other?
Without doubt.
A liking?
Well, liking too, perhaps.
Perhaps even an emerging friendship?
Well, Mr. Talbot was good enough to refer to call it that.
Mr. Jaswant Singh, let's take a break at that point. I want to come back in part two and focus a little bit more specifically on what lies at the core of our discussion, but we haven't touched on as yet, India's relationship with Pakistan. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're talking to Mr. Jaswant Singh. Mr. Jaswant Singh, let me now focus on a different area, Kashmir and India's relationship with Pakistan. How do you respond to the view that India's nuclear tests have ended up internationalizing the Kashmir issue to our disadvantage?
In fact, this overstates the case. Kashmir was internationalized when the former Prime Minister first had the matter referred to the United Nations. And thereafter it remained internationalized. It then got internationalized in the Tashkent Conference. That was true internationalization. It really got bilateralized, as the process of experience in the Shimla conference.
You're making a very fair point, but at the same time, isn't it true that earlier, when the consequences of an Indo-Pakistan conflict were containable, the world didn't particularly worry itself about our differences with Pakistan over Kashmir? Today, when those consequences have become potentially catastrophic, Kashmir has become an issue of international concern. No longer is it viewed as a bilateral dispute located in South Asia, it's become an international flashpoint.
I find that view somewhat patronizing. The assumption being that it's only South Asia that is irresponsible. India and Pakistan have unfortunately had 4 conflicts. And they are exception of these 4 conflicts by the kind of restraint that both nations have shown. Even in example, attacking of civilian territory. Therefore, there is no such fear. This is an assumed, and I said in the United States of America that I'm in total disagreement with this induced hysteria that I see in the West.
No doubt, but at the same time, this induced hysteria is creating a sense of pressure on us from most Western capitals to sit with Pakistan and talk Kashmir. That's exactly what Pakistan wants. It isn't really what we want.
No, that is not so. In 1972, we said we will talk about Kashmir, but bilaterally.
Quite right, but now we're being pushed into it by the world.
Not pushed into it at all. We have made our position very clear to the Secretary General, whom I met, incidentally, for an hour and a half, to the US administration, to the senators, to the P5, to the G8, to all international assemblies to which we have had access. Kashmir is India's state. The problem of discussing it with Pakistan is ours. We understand each other's language perfectly. We do not need interpreters for this job.
No, but are you not worried that this constant pressure from abroad may push the pace in a way in which we may end up talking in a manner we don't want? Perhaps talking on subjects we don't wish to talk about?
No, I'm not. I don't think India can be pushed. Individuals can be pushed.
Not a country like India.
Not a country like India.
Therein lies our security.
Therein also lies our strength.
Okay, then let's come, if I may, to a subject that concerns people, the substantive issue of the talks with Pakistan. Am I right in believing that in the Dhaka proposals given by India to Pakistan in January, we have now agreed to a joint working group on Kashmir and peace and security?
Well, I think that remains somewhat of a grey, contentious area. There are assertions of one kind from one side, assertions of another kind from another side. What we are asserting is that really what is at the core of it is confidence and security measures between India and Pakistan. If you have confidence building and security related matters being discussed, you will discuss the entire gamut of relations.
Let me put something to you. People don't understand what working groups are. The layman doesn't understand that terminology. People don't understand why there are differences between India and Pakistan on whether the working groups, 8 of them, should meet together or separately. But what people say is that these are relatively small, relatively petty, meaningless procedural issues that are holding up the bigger desire, which is to sit and talk. Why can't India, the bigger country, take the initiative and say, have a working group on Kashmir, and let's meet together if you insist, or let's meet separately if you insist, but let's get the process going. Why can't we take that
But this
lead?
is what we have said, precisely that.
So you have said take a working group on
No, not
Kashmir?
working group, because I'm not, you are stuck on the physiology of working group. I have said openly here, abroad, much more important than what I say is what the Prime Minister has. Prime Minister has told openly and has offered to Mian Sahib Nawaz Sharif, let us talk about Kashmir if you wish to.
That's perfectly true. But
Yeah.
if the Pakistanis want a working group because it's important to them, why can't we concede it so we can get on and talk? Why are we making it a stumbling block?
No, it is not a stumbling block as far as India is concerned. I think it needs to be understood that India and Pakistan, when coming to Kashmir, are arriving at this position not as if there was nothing in the past. They are arriving at that position, both the countries, with a great deal of the excess baggage of the past.
But the more we pay attention to the past, the more we
Exactly.
remain victims of the past.
Yes, and that is why I said we are ready to talk to Pakistan on any issue, at any level, at any venue on any date.
Let me simplify it. If the Pakistani response to you is a working group is important to us for domestic political reasons, can we concede it so that we can get on and talk?
And let that first be said.
But if it's said, do you think there's room to concede?
No, because you are asking me to be explicit about a hypothesis. I don't think that is necessary.
Okay, let me then pick up something you said in your press conference in New York. You said that you were prepared to talk to Pakistan on any subject, including Kashmir, and then a moment later you also said that such talks would not change or alter the reality of that state.
That's right.
In which case, what sort of talks on Kashmir do you envisage?
No, but the talks are not... you see, what we must recognize, that map making has to come to a stop on the subcontinent. If you are talking about a kind of cartographic, constantly altering of the South Asian situation, that cannot take place. That is the reality.
What can take place?
We can answer to all the security and confidence building aspects, including what ails Pakistan so far as Jammu Kashmir is concerned. And if you wish me
Can I
to point out-
interpret? Can I interpret what you said?
Yes,
Can you
but-
do one thing further? You said we can't change reality. Can we accept a reality? The
Then I
reality is that the line of occupation is in fact the official border, and we accept
yes,
that.
There are many aspects or facets of that reality. Would there be, therefore, a recognition by the global community of state-sponsored terrorism? Would there be a reality, therefore, of what is recently taking place in Doda? These are complicated questions. And to complicated questions, an attempt to find an immediate soundbite answer is perilous.
No, don't give me a soundbite answer, because that would be an invidious thing for me to ask you to
Yes.
do. But can you indicate that there is, on our part, a willingness to at least compromise so far as it takes to agree to accepting reality? The reality is the borders here. Let's accept the de facto. Let's forget about the de jure claims on both sides. Is that much compromise possible?
No, the choice of the word is compromise. It's a very unhappy choice.
Okay, what would you prefer?
I have said, the government has said, let us talk. And let us talk about Kashmir.
And this issue that I've now touched on
No,
could
who
be part
has-
of the agenda. It could be part of the agenda.
This issue can be part of the agenda only if it is raised by somebody. India is not going to raise it.
I think you've said enough. I won't push you further, but you have indicated that if they put it on the agenda, you're prepared to talk about it.
We are prepared to talk about any aspect of Kashmir, but Pakistan has to be prepared to talk.
My last question, given that most people all over the world view the Indian and Pakistani positions on Kashmir as irreconcilable, immovable, unchangeable, why are we ruling out the possibility of third-party mediation when it might just bridge the gap?
No, because our experience informs us that both these assumptions are wrong. Irreconcilable, immovable, third-party mediation, history informs us. Whenever a third party attempts to intrude on the South subcontinent of South Asia, it disturbs the entire South Asian subcontinent so fundamentally as to leave it disturbed for a very long time. Afghanistan is the latest
Of
case.
course, there are examples to the contrary, Egypt and Israel, more recently Israel and
Yes, but
Palestine.
I know, but India is not Egypt, and your equation of Israel with Pakistan might not be liked by them.
All right. Let's leave it there, Mr. Jaswant Singh. I think you've touched on a lot of issues, and I think the discerning will interpret themselves what you've said, but there's clearly room for movement, which you've indicated in language that you prefer to choose for yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking so openly to Refocus. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another interviewee. But for today, from Mr. Jaswant Singh's office in the Planning Commission, New Delhi, goodbye.